George Benson was born in 1943 and raised in Pittsburgh's Lively Hill district. At just 7 years old, he first strummed a ukulele in a corner drugstore, earning a few dollars for his playing. By age 8, he was already gigging in an unlicensed nightclub on weekends, though the police would soon shut it down. Benson started recording at the age of 9, cutting 4 sides, including his debut single, She Makes Me Mad. Benson attended and graduated from Shenley High School in his hometown. As a teen, he learned straight-ahead jazz instrumental technique from organist Jack McDuff, and they'd perform regularly together for years. Country jazz guitarist Hank Garland was one of the young Benson's earliest guitar heroes. He had soaked up a variety of musical flavors on the bustling Hill District streets before even reaching adulthood. This early exposure to blues, R&B, and jazz informed Benson's rapid development on the guitar. Necessity and hardship also molded his scrappy, resourceful approach. But natural talent and relentless practice made him a consummate musician years before many even pick up the instrument. By following his passion in any venue that would have him, Benson found his voice early, and from there he never stopped evolving. It was legendary jazz guitarist Wes Montgomery who first came across a young George Benson and complimented the up-and-coming player's impressive work, urging him to continue to develop his skills. In the early 60s, Benson apprenticed with organist Jack McDuff and found Jack's gritty, swinging style a fertile ground for Benson's own sly, confident, and adventurous guitar lines. Jack also got Benson into a lot of different jazz styles early on. Many jazz pieces they performed were rhythmic and made for dancing, which helped George grasp the audience's preferences. The era when jazz rhythms dominated was indeed in its golden age. Later, the genre evolved into more cerebral forms, like the music of Charlie Parker, which represented a shift to a more sophisticated sound. Wes Montgomery had called one of his best records boss guitar. Benson had the conviction and chops to challenge his hero. His 1964 debut album was called The New Boss Guitar and lived up to its bold name. Benson's tone was juicy, and his blues solos sparkled with carefully honed logic. A jaunty funk and swing aesthetic prevailed. By the time legendary talent scout John Hammond signed Benson to Columbia, the young guitarist's name was already creating a buzz in the industry. His work for Columbia Records proved Hammond's hunch correct. Benson's brains and flash were in perfect sync. He had sat down with a blind pianist from San Francisco named Freddie Gambrell, who turned him on to some clever ways to get in and out of chord changes and weld harmonies together. Of course, George still wanted to emulate his heroes like Django Reinhardt, Charlie Christian, and Hank Garland, who were some of the edgiest players of the day, and really they are still relevant even today. At 21, Benson recorded his debut as leader. His next album was called It's Uptown with the George Benson Quartet, including organist Lonnie Smith and baritone sax player Ronnie Cuber. Benson's guitar chops were on full display on the follow-up Cookbook, with Smith and Cuber joining drummer Marion Booker. Benson's talent caught the attention of Miles Davis, who featured him on the track Paraphernalia from his 1968 Columbia release Miles in the Sky. This high-profile appearance gained Benson wider recognition before he moved to Verve Records as a solo artist. Benson's recordings from this fertile period showed both innovation and deep respect for what came before. Benson then signed with Creed Taylor's renowned CTI Jazz label, where he recorded several successful albums featuring jazz heavyweights as guests. His 1974 release, Bad Benson, topped Billboard's jazz chart, while Good King Bad and the Joe Farrell collaboration, Benson and Farrell, both reached the jazz top 3. Benson also put his own spin on classic pop, covering the Beatles' Abbey Road on his album The Other Side of Abbey Road in 1969, and also Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit. Around this time, too, he was starting to appear more as a session player on numerous CTI records, including albums by Freddie Hubbard and Stanley Turrentine, with one of the standout songs being the acclaimed Sugar, which has become a jazz staple. Under CTI, Benson refined his accessible, soulful jazz style that appealed to a wider audience beyond just pure jazz circles. Though he was a talented improviser, he focused on melodic phrasing and rhythmic groove rather than flashy solos. His vibrant guitar anchored all-star CTI sessions while receiving star billing on his own projects. By the mid-70s, Benson had signed with Warner Brothers, and with this, he ended up reaching a whole new audience. On his 1976 album, Breezin, Benson sang lead vocal on Leon Russell's This Masquerade, marking very rare singing duties for him at the time. This became a monumental pop hit and won the Grammy for the Record of the Year. By 1976, George Benson toured with singer Minnie Riperton and also appeared as a guitarist and backup vocalist on Stevie Wonder's Another Star from Songs in the Key of Life. He also recorded the original version of The Greatest Love of All for the 1977 Muhammad Ali biopic, The Greatest. And this song was later covered by Whitney Houston, which became a huge hit for her later on. During this period, Benson recorded with German conductor Klaus Ogerman and won another Grammy for his 1978 live rendition of On Broadway from Weekend in LA. On Broadway. Benson's major pop breakthrough came with 1981's Give Me the Night, produced by Quincy Jones on his Quest label. This title track became Benson's first top 10 pop and R&B hit. He followed with successful singles like Love All the Hurt Away, Turn Your Love Around, and 2020. Jones encouraged Benson to reconnect with his vocal jazz roots and rediscover inspirations like Nat King Cole, Ray Charles, and Donny Hathaway. This influence sparked further vocal albums, tapping into soul, pop, and R&B. Give Me the Night went triple platinum, with Benson accumulating 3 more platinum and 2 gold albums during this commercially fruitful period. Quincy Jones helped Benson harness his talents for the changing times, but all without losing his original musical identity. Though jazz can be a niche genre, Benson has managed to gain widespread popularity by bringing danceable rhythms and audience participation back into his performances, bringing to mind lively jazz shows of New Orleans. And he credits this lively approach for jazz's connection to R&B and blues. As a vocalist, melody is paramount to Benson. Even when improvising on guitar, the melody is always on his mind, taking precedence over flashy solos. In his view, vocals and melody form the core of a song, while improvisation serves to complement them. This musical philosophy has served him well in his extensive career. In 1978, George Benson collaborated with Japanese guitar company Ibanez to design his first signature models, helping to bring their instruments to prominence. His latest signature model is the GB5, an acoustic electric jazz guitar. Its full, woody tone comes from the hollow body and acoustic pickups. The warm, unamplified sound is reminiscent of jazz greats like Wes Montgomery, who also favored these hollow-bodied guitars. And the natural acoustic timbre allows Benson to achieve the clean melodic tones essential to his musical style. And because of this approach that he has with concentrating fully on the melody, George Benson managed to win over the jazz purists and pop audiences alike. Among guitar players, those who are particularly fascinated by George Benson's flawless technique have formed entire schools of thought in efforts to analyze and understand it. George's playing is so technically masterful that many guitar players dedicate years trying to unravel the intricacies of his approach. For these players, decoding the secrets behind Benson's execution is a tireless pursuit without end. As a young man, Benson's father had first shaped his unique right-hand guitar technique. He told him to let your hand hang down loosely, placing a flat pick in young Benson's hand. Now just raise it up to the guitar, and this way you'll see what feels natural. This simple advice let Benson's picking hand form its own natural way of holding the pick that was different from standard techniques. Rather than squeeze a pick between the thumb and the index finger, Benson's grip involved his index and middle fingers clenched together, allowing fluid lateral motions across the strings. Over his extensive career, Benson realized he can never exactly copy the advanced techniques of players like his friend Pat Martino with his buttery smooth picking approach, but rather than struggle to imitate, he innovated his own style that complemented his own musical ideas. During one jam session, Martino himself was dazzled by Benson's slick alternate picking technique on a rapid jazz line, proving that two masters could always learn from one another. As teenage devotees of jazz guitar, Benson and Martino had worshipped legends like Joe Pass and Wes Montgomery, but they were particularly enamored by the fiery outside playing of Tal Farlow. Farlow inspired them to venture beyond standard jazz voicings and inject more adventurous flavors into their improvisations. He would launch into a blues solo using slinky chromatic notes and unpredictable rhythmic displacements to outline a dominant seventh chord. Benson's right-hand technique was never about sheer speed or complexity, but following his own hand's natural tendencies and exploring new approaches, he developed an instantly recognizable, warm, round tone and smooth phrasing that served his improvisational needs. Another aspect of his picking technique, George developed his signature horizontal picking strategy out of necessity. The way his father taught him how to hold a pick made fast vertical playing, which is just going up a traditional shape, very difficult. So he found it much easier to play consecutive notes by moving up and down the guitar neck instead. There was an amusing irony in going down the neck to play higher notes, which initially confused his brain. But over time, the connection between the direction of his hand and the rising melody actually felt intuitive. This freed his mind to think ahead musically, rather than getting caught up in mechanics. Staying on one string longer helped unify his tone. Moving between the strings inherently alters the sound. The jazz greats he admired exploited this effect, crafting long melodic passages on single violin-like string. Keys never limited his horizontal approach. In his mind, the guitar fretboard was endless, transposing freely to whatever position fit the music. Only two hand positions truly felt natural, but the transitions between them were worked out over years of deep practice. Any struggles disappeared long ago. Now, of course, the greater public, beyond just guitar players, revere Benson just as much because he's always brought the whole package. Musicianship, showmanship, along with catchy hits. Benson speaks to all crowds. In 1990, Benson received an honorary doctorate in music from the Berklee College in recognition of his contributions to the field. To celebrate 30 years of partnership, Ibanez created the limited edition GB30TH model inspired by Japanese Garahaku art as a tribute to Benson. Benson's influence stretched across genres, as shown by his collaboration with folk icon Joni Mitchell, who played his signature Ibanez guitar model in '78. In 2009, he was honored as an American Jazz Master by the National Endowment for the Arts, the nation's highest jazz distinction. That same year, Benson performed at the Ohrid Summer Festival in North Macedonia, as well as the Istanbul Jazz Festival. In the fall of 2009, Benson finished recording an album titled Songs and Stories with bassist and producer Marcus Miller, producer John Burke, and session musicians David Pite on keyboards and Steve Lukather on the guitar. As part of the promotion for his album, Songs and Stories, Benson appeared or performed on the Tavis Smiley Show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. Benson performed at the Java Jazz Festival in 2011, and he released the album Guitar Man, revisiting his 1960s, early 70s guitar playing roots, with a 12-song collection of covers of both jazz and pop standards, produced by John Burke. And in 2013, he released a tribute to Nat King Cole, which included trumpeter Winston Marsalis and singer Judith Hill, among others. Through the later 2010s and early 2020s, George Benson has been plagued with various health problems, resulting in a fairly spotty touring schedule. In 2018, before a packed Royal Albert Hall show, Benson lost his voice. He performed 4 or 5 instrumental songs and attempted some scatting, but told the audience that he was struggling with his voice and would continue playing instrumentally before trying to sing again. After a few more instrumental tunes, some people in the audience started booing loudly, and this clearly upset Benson. A number of people had walked out of the show as well. The promoters ended up cutting the concert short. Many attendees were just there to hear his hits, Give Me the Night and Turn Your Love Around. While jazz guitar wasn't everybody's preference, his diehard fans spoke up afterwards saying the audience should have appreciated seeing a master musician rather than deriding his performance. Benson was better known as a guitar player than a vocalist. And those who walked out had likely come to hear hit songs and probably had no idea how iconic he was and how deep his musical past was, extending way beyond pop hits that they knew of. It's a harsh reality when someone as legendary as Benson could get that kind of treatment from an audience when he did show up to perform. He did not walk off that stage. Instead, he respected the fact that his voice gave out and that people had shown up to see him perform, and he did not want to let them down. Definitely not fitting treatment. As 2024 approached, he was scheduled to perform a series of concerts in the UK over the summer. Fans eagerly anticipated the shows. However, as the performance dates drew near, Benson's health took a turn for the worse, prompting the unfortunate cancellation of these highly anticipated concerts. The news was met with understanding and concern from his devoted fans, who wished the musical icon a full and swift recovery. George Benson's impact on the music world over his decades-long career is undeniable, with a body of work seamlessly bridging the gap between pure jazz and broadly appealing pop. He crafted a legacy that forever altered the musical landscape. His ability to cross over between jazz and pop expanded his own artistic horizons and also facilitated a cultural exchange between diverse listeners. Pop aficionados discovered the complex emotional depths of jazz through Benson's work, while jazz fans found new rhythms and melodies in the contours of pop music. So we definitely hope to be able to see Benson back out there. And if you like what you see here, make sure to kindly smack that like button. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button and join the family. Thank you so much for watching.